Good evening, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and this is the Memorial PGA Golf Tournament with Brady Kannon, our weekly trip out to Vegas. I'm so jealous as we break down Jack's Place, the Memorial, a star-studded lineup here. Going to be a definite great tournament. Myself and Brady talking behind the glass and talking about Tiger and his 5 wins, talking about Jack. I was reminiscing, looking at my Jack and Tiger painting on the wall, and it always brings me smiles. Shout out to Ben Cohen, editor producer behind the glass tonight. So we're ready to break this down and see if we can find some winners. I got all the confidence in the world. Brady's going to break this down and on Sunday get some Sunday sweats and cash a few tickets. So without further ado, let's bring him in, the one and only Mr. Brady Kannon.
Mr. Dawson, how are you, sir? Good to be on with you once again on a Wednesday, talking golf, of course, and a big boy golf tournament for sure. You know, it's been a pretty good run. It was, let's see, what do we say? 3 weeks ago, we started with the Byron Nelson. And then last week we go to Hogan's Alley, and here we are at Jack's Place. 3 golf legends in about the last 4 or 5 weeks or so. And you know, I love the Colonial. It's a great golf course. It's a different type of test. The Byron Nelson, it was a great tournament for us hitting Jason Day this year. But this is probably my favorite of the 3. This is absolutely big boy golf. This course, Muirfield Village, built by Mr. Nicklaus in 1974, started playing the Memorial in 1976. He named it Muirfield after Muirfield in Scotland, where he won the British Open in 1966. And then he designed it with Augusta National in mind. The par 3, I think it's the same 12th hole at Muirfield as we have at Augusta, the 12th. It's almost identical. So Jack, you know, paying homage to his 6 Masters victories, with a lot going into the design here at Muirfield with that influence. And different from Augusta, he's grown the rough up. So the fairways are pretty wide and receptive, but the rough is really thick that borders them. And you mentioned Tiger, you know, winning here 5 times. And it's just a really good one. Lately, it's kind of been dominated by Patrick Cantlay and Jon Rahm. And obviously, they're both in the field again this week. An elevated event. I think outside of the majors and what have you, this is the 9th elevated event on tour this season. So all the studs are here. About the only 2 names that are missing for one reason or another, Max Homa and Tony Finau. Otherwise, we've got the whole contingent of the studs here. And you see it on the odds board. These elevated events, Jeff, have really been kind of dominated by the chalk, and you would expect that. I mean, when you put 30 or 40 of the best players in the world out there, and this is only a field of 120, by the way. It's an invitational. So, you know, you've got a third of the field being dominated by the very best players in the world. It's no surprise that they're getting themselves to the winner's circle.
I'm listening throughout the week this week. I follow Rick Gaiman, and he's just breaking down numbers that are just mind-boggling. I'm going back to last weekend, and we go back to last week's show, and Scotty Scheffler was, you know, a huge gap, 4-1 or whatever the number was pre-flop for him to win. And all weekend, you know, even though he was 3-4 shots back, he's still only 2-3-1. We're expecting that Scotty Scheffler charge, but tee to green, 15, 16 strokes this guy's gaining. He just cannot putt right now. And they were talking about it. They says if he ever found his groove this weekend putting, he might lap the field. Can you talk about the actual numbers that Scotty, they're saying he's like inhuman, some of the numbers that are showing up on the spreadsheets.
Yeah, it's really amazing. And he's been on a heck of a run. And we talked about it last week on the show as well. You know, that we were kind of just shrugging it off. He seems to finish top 5 every week. And then you talk about some of the numbers and stuff that was coming out. the truth is he really does finish like that. It's a run of like, I'm not sure he's finished outside the top 20 all year. It's just an incredible run. I mean, he's won a couple of times, but as far as his finishing position, this guy is just never out of it. And it was pretty wild what he did at the Colonial. Of course, last year he lost, I believe it was in a playoff to Sam Burns. And here he is, one shot out of a playoff this year, despite all the putting woes. Yeah, he is just really something as far as ball striking and off the tee. He's absolutely the best in the world right now. And if you crunch all the numbers, he's number one in every category. And then he drops off the map. I think this week for putting out of 120 golfers, he's around 90th or something like that. So, it's kind of odd too. It's like he's gotten the putter bug here in just the last couple of weeks. He hasn't always been an awful putter, but it's really gotten a hold of him here recently. And I wrote an article for the PGA Tour on Friday. I always write an article after the cut on Friday going into the weekend. Who do you want to back and who do you want to fade? And Scotty Scheffler was one of the guys I was going to back because he was doing everything so well, like he normally does. His ball striking, his driving accuracy, hitting greens in regulation, all the crucial statistics were on point for Scotty Scheffler, except for the putter. He was losing like over 2 strokes, I believe, to the field putting. And you and I have talked about it before. Putting is the most volatile statistic. It can change from hole to hole, from front nine to back nine, from day to day, from week to week. Even good putters are going to have a bad day, and even bad putters are going to have a great day. It's just not a skill set that is, over time, yes, good putters are good putters and bad putters are bad putters, but it can change on a dime, at any time. Emiliano Grillo, who won the tournament last week, his whole career, he's been an awful putter and he didn't putt that great, but putted well enough to win the tournament last week. So I felt that, with Scotty doing everything so well and the putter being ice cold, that would flip. That would tend to go back to the mean. And it never did. And that was very surprising to me. But that's the type of thing I like to look for when you're halfway through a golf tournament. If a guy's doing everything really well and all of a sudden the putting is, at one end of the spectrum or the other, like Harry Hall. Harry Hall was putting lights out. He shot a 62 to open that tournament. Everything else he was doing was above average, but his putter was carrying him. He was gaining almost 9 strokes on the field at some point. I remember looking and doing my research. And it's not like, the same way that Scheffler, it's not typical that you're going to be that bad for an extended period of time. It's not typical that Harry Hall was going to be that great for an extended period of time. And he was a guy I was wanting to fade going into the weekend, and hats off to him. He hung right in there as well, missed the playoff by a shot. But, putting is a statistic, having trouble with that word today, that it is very volatile. And a lot of times it can help you in your handicap because it'll usually regress one way or another towards the mean. It hasn't yet for Scotty Scheffler. We'll see if it does this week.
I'm going to add on to that, a tournament like last weekend when he is the hunted, he is the clear favorite. Everyone's, making the charge for him before the tournament starts. When you have a Rahm, Cantlay, Xander, and even a Rory in this field, do you think maybe that takes a little pressure off of him? And as you said, if everything is all systems go and that putter clicks, he is, on DraftKings, yes, he's plus 650. Rahm is 750. Cantlay 1,000, and Xander 1,200. But there's a lot of more golfers that are closer. You think maybe there's a little less pressure on him this week, which might help him in his putting?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And not that these guys really pay attention to the odds board, but he knows that he's not necessarily the clear-cut favorite this week. Last week, he probably knew he was. There was certainly some very good players in that field, but this week is on a different level. So, he knows he's one of 10 guys maybe that, are at the top of the list this week. And maybe that does take a little bit of pressure off when he doesn't have those expectations. But, it's also interesting that Scotty Scheffler seems to flourish when the competition is the best. Played very, very well at the PGA Championship, won at the WM Phoenix Open, an elevated event earlier this year on Super Bowl weekend, and then also won the Players Championship, which is, probably next to the PGA, the very best field of the entire season. So when the stakes are high and the fields are at their best is when Scotty's been at his best. And who are we to say this guy's not going to finish top 5 again? So, and I'll tell you what, on this golf course, I think it's a little different too. And not that Colonial was easy by any means. I mean, the winning score was 8 under par. Obviously, that course played very difficult, but I think this will be even a more difficult test this week, even though I think the winning score will be lower. This is a tough golf course where I think maybe not as many players in the field will be able to succeed on this property. It's almost 7,600 yards. I mentioned the very thick rough, the fast and firm greens. This is a tough one, and it's that close to a major championship type setup. Is Scotty Scheffler going to finish top 5 again? It wouldn't surprise me at all, but he's probably going to have to do better with the flat stick this week than he did last week in order to, remain in that bunch against this competition.
Well, I have to, truth be told, our friends at DraftKings, they throw you that little carrot where they're going to add a plus 250 to the number. And you get one swing. So I took Scotty Scheffler at plus 650, turned it into a plus 900. And that was my one little initial swing. I said, all right, I'll take that. 9-1 looks a lot better than, plus 650.
Absolutely. The only thing that's, and you'd almost want to just bet the farm on him to finish top 20, right? And that number is probably minus 200. Who knows? I don't know if they'd give you a boost on that number. But I agree with you. I don't dabble in betting guys to win golf tournaments in the single digits too often. I will at the Masters because that is typically when we get the chalk. And I did bet Rory McIlroy this year at 12-1. That did not work out. Rory's been a thorn in my side this year. We'll see what he does this week. But the other thing, to back up your reasoning in going with a short price this week is what we mentioned earlier, on the show, that these elevated events have been won by, chalkier players, shorter prices. Really, the only longer bomb that has won in an elevated field so far this season was Wyndham Clark a few weeks ago at the Wells Fargo, where he was anywhere from 75 to 100-1. Other than that, it's been pretty short. It's been Jon Rahm and Scotty Scheffler and, not a whole lot of other folks winning these elevated events. So, why not grab a 9-1 in this type of setting?
Before we dive into the outrights, the head-to-heads, and the first-round leaders, I have to ask you this, and it's just a thorn in my side. We talk about auto plays. When certain guys get to certain numbers, you just have to play them. You deep down, they're not in form. Something's not right. But for instance, a Rory in this field is at 14-1. I saw it yesterday or 2 days ago. Justin Thomas at 35 plus 3,500, now down to 3,000. Do those, when you are dissecting and then you go to the number boards, do you have any certain auto plays? Does like a Rory at 14-1 and a plus 3,250, do they become auto plays?
I would say if I have an auto play on my resume, it's Jordan Spieth at the Masters if he's at 25 or greater.
Okay.
I don't know if I have any other auto plays, and I'm not against auto plays. I think everybody can make up their own. If you have a guy that you like in a certain situation at a certain number and you see it pop, go. More power to you. And for me, that's Jordan Spieth at the Masters at 25 or better. And I think I may have maybe it was last year. I can't remember. But if I see him there again, I'll pull the trigger once again. But you mentioned Justin Thomas, and I did land on JT this week because I saw him at 35. And part of my reasoning there was, hey, this is still the 15th ranked player in the world. This is still Justin Thomas. I know he's been off the boil this year. He's a great scrambler. He's done tremendous at this golf course. He makes a lot of sense for me at all the correlated courses this week, where he's also had tremendous success. And at 35, I got him at 35. I actually saw it tick to 36 for just a minute. And I've seen it now come crashing back down to like as low as 28 or 26 in some spots. So people were kind of keen on what I was thinking as well. But when I saw 35, I said, you know what, that's the threshold right there. And you and I, Jeff, have talked about this. I think we go back to the Players' Championship all the way back in March when his number was starting to get to 25 and 29. And I waited. I don't think I've bet him all season. But this week we got to 35 and I said, all right, green light. I'm going to take a piece of JT.
TJ just says he saw 24 and he missed the boat. TJ, if you got a DraftKings right now has it at plus 3,000. It was 3,500 as of early yesterday morning. So with that said, I am going to take out my lob wedge and chip it over to you and hand you the course, my friend.
All right. Very good. Well, the first player on my board is 35-1, Jason Day. He is a member here at Muirfield Village, and that is always not the end-all, be-all sign of success. Sometimes it can really backfire. But with the recent changes that Nicklaus has made to the greens, and he's always doing some tweaks with this golf course, nobody should know it better as far as what's going on there in recent history than Jason Day, who lives nearby to Dublin, Ohio, and Muirfield Village. He also comes off of a cut at the PGA Championship a couple of weeks ago. And in the 3 prior occasions that Jason Day missed the cut this season, in the follow-up week, he finished top 10 and won at the Byron Nelson off of that cut he missed at the Wells Fargo. So I think Day is in a good spot to rebound here on a course that he's very comfortable with. He's had good success at this golf course in the past. He certainly ticks on some of the correlated courses I used this week, one of which is TPC Sawgrass, where he's won before as well. So, I got Jason Day at 35-1. Probably not my most confident pick of all, but I have a feeling he's going to show up again this week. And so I wanted to have a little bit of him in my pocket. And I thought 35 was a pretty fair number. I mentioned Justin Thomas, grabbed him at 35 as well. Some of the other courses I used as correlated courses this week were Nicklaus courses. Nicklaus did the concession, where they played the concession championship in 2021, kind of post-COVID. They went there and played that course in Florida. Justin Thomas finished 15th at the concession, as did Jason Day, by the way. You talk about the Honda Classic. They play at PGA National, another Nicklaus track. Justin Thomas has won there before. Innisbrook, where they play the Valspar, I think is kind of similar in the skill sets that you need at Memorial, a U.S. Open type test. And Justin Thomas has really dominated at the Valspar with a number of top 10 finishes. Also East Lake, where they play the Tour Championship, and Thomas has had great success there. So he checks just about every box I'm looking at except for current form. And I saw the number go to 35, and I said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and dive in on JT. I haven't all year, but you remember it was, well, he's got a couple of top 10 finishes here and also a top 20. And it was the COVID year when they played here back to back. They played the work day and then they played the Memorial in back-to-back weeks. Justin Thomas lost in a playoff in that work day to Colin Morikawa. So he is plenty good at this golf course. Ricky Fowler at 42-1, another guy, and I've seen it as high as 48, another guy that is really good on this golf course, has won at PGA National, the Honda Classic, has won the Players' Championship, has had success at East Lake. Again, all the correlated courses. He's also finished runner-up here twice. And over the last 36 rounds, Ricky Fowler ranks 6th in this field for strokes gained approach. So his iron game, his short game, he is just, and he comes off of a 6th place finish last week at Colonial too. Jeff, you and I talked about this. Colonial and Memorial are always a couple of tournaments that I like to look at to try and find some clues as to what I might be able to transfer over into a U.S. Open winner or someone that's going to have success at the U.S. Open. Colonial is very much like a U.S. Open, hosted an Open in 1941. And I really think Memorial, even though Jack designed it with a lot of Augusta on his mind, I really think it's more of a U.S. Open type track. In the last I think it's since 2002, you've had 6 winners of the Memorial who were also U.S. Open winners, and another handful of guys who have won at the Memorial in that time span, combined for like 14 top 10 finishes at the U.S. Open. So I think there's a lot to be said here. I mean, Justin Rose is another guy that's won both the Memorial and the U.S. Open. Tiger Woods, Jim Furyk. So a lot of correlation there. And Ricky Fowler, having done well at Colonial, kind of by the transit, if you will, maybe he should do well at this golf course as well this week. Then I went to Hideki Matsuyama. Did get him at 48-1. And I was surprised. I've seen him, I think, as low as about 36. Matsuyama, over the last 36 rounds, he is 11th in this field for strokes gained around the green, 19th in strokes gained approach, 6th in hole proximity from 175 to 200 yards, and 4th in bogey avoidance. Those were some of my key statistics this week. I think I think if you only gave me 2 statistics to look at this week as what would be the very most important, I think it'll be iron play, strokes gained approach, and strokes gained around the green. Scrambling, getting up and down, the work around the greens, the iron play, that is just going to be paramount. And Hideki Matsuyama is really good in those areas. Also a former winner here at the Memorial, also has had a pair of additional top 6 finishes here at this golf course. And he's also in really good form. I think it's his last 5 strokes play tournaments. He has not finished worse than 29th. So I thought Hideki, the timing might be right on him too. And how often do you see him at nearly 50-1? And then I went with some bombs. Keegan Bradley at 85-1. Just always seems to play well on difficult golf courses, and especially in the northeast part of the country. He's got 2 top 10 finishes at this event, 2 top 10s at TPC Sawgrass. He has runner-up finishes at both the Valspar and then another correlated course I used, TPC Potomac, where they held the Wells Fargo Championship in 2022. He finished 2nd there to Max Homa. Over the last 36 rounds, he is 13th in this field on the par 5s, measuring 550 to 600 yards, which they all do here. And he's 19th in hole proximity from 175 to 200. 85-1 felt like a big number on this guy who just seems to contend in big boy golf tournaments. And then I went with Matt Kuchar at 90-1. And you talk about course form. This is a former winner here, Jeff. How about these finishes for Kuchar in his long, storied career? 13th, 10th, 5th, 8th, 2nd, 1st, 15th, 4th, 4th, 13th. Just a machine here. And I expect him to be in the mix once again. Probably a great bet to finish top 20. He has the very best short game in the field over the last 36 rounds. Strokes gained around the green and scrambling. Number 1 is Matt Kuchar, and surprisingly 6th in this field on strokes gained par 5s as well, of 550 to 600 yards. So Kuchar, another guy, also excellent 8th in bogey avoidance. He doesn't come off as a guy that can, beat a loaded field like this, but at around 100-1 or so, I think he's worth a little stab with the course form and everything that he's doing current form as well. And then finally, the longest bomb at 125-1, Chris Kirk. And kind of similar to the Kuchar profile here, doesn't have the course form, but does have a finish as high as 4th place here. Won at a Nicklaus course earlier this year, the Honda Classic at PGA National. He's got top 15 finishes at the Players Championship. He's got a tremendous short game. He's good on the par 4s. So just an all-around solid game out of Chris Kirk. And Kuchar may be a little bit more logical long shot. I think Chris Kirk is obviously a long shot, but 125 felt too long to me. So I took a little stab with him as well.
I mean, looking at these numbers, I think you nailed it. I've been hearing a lot of people very quietly talking about Ricky and what he has done. Go back, a year, 18 months ago, where he was and where he is now today. And almost want to hand him a most improved.
Oh
As
yeah.
he's just back to the Ricky that we know, and getting
Which is
him at.
awesome, isn't it? It's
It
great to
is
see him
awesome.
contending. He's good for the game, and I will admit, Jeff, I didn't always used to like him. How he seemed like such a nice guy, and I hate that. That sounds weird to say you didn't like a nice guy, but he kind of seemed like he was the guy that was always there to congratulate his buddies. He was never winning, but he was always the guy that was there. And I was like, God, Ricky, stop that stuff. Go win yourself. And it started to bother me. And now this is probably, gosh, at least 10 years, maybe 8 years later, he's grown up. I've grown to have an affinity for him. And now with him improving, I think it's kind of all happened at the same time. We're like, now it's great to see he's not back there congratulating all his buddies anymore. He's starting to do it himself, a rebirth of his career, it seems. And it's great to see, I think, for Ricky and golf fans alike.
And what you said, Matsuyama at 48-1. I'm rattling my brain as you were going through some of these guys. I can't remember the last time I've seen a price on him that high.
Yeah, I can't really either. You would think even a major championship, there are some shops that I'm still seeing hanging 40. I got 48 at Circa, and last time I checked, it hadn't changed. They don't respect my money. They didn't change it when I bet it. So, anyway, that's, Circa oftentimes has some of the best numbers on golf futures. Not all the time, but often they will.
Spot on. Jeffrey, Derek, and the boys do an amazing job. For a lot of our clients, they don't have Circa. And then that used to be my final number I would send out. And I was looking at, I think it was at the PGA when we sent out the PGA, and compared DraftKings to Circa, and it was like apples and oranges, where you'd get a Ricky Fowler at, as you said, 30-1, and at Circa on DraftKings, and Circa would be sitting there at 48-1. And I felt guilty if I used the Circa numbers, because 99 out of 100 couldn't have got those numbers.
Right. I hear you.
All right. Amazing field that you have in the outrights. Your choice, head to heads, or do you want to go to first round leaders?
Well, I'll give you the head-to-head matchups first. I've got 4 of them this week, and I think it's kind of an interesting batch. I went with Jason Day at even money over Colin Morikawa. Morikawa's just been a little bit off lately, and he could certainly rebound here as well. He's had great success. He won that work day I mentioned in a playoff over JT. He won at the concession. So there's a lot of things that make sense for Morikawa as well. But kind of like Scotty Scheffler, his putting and his short game has been really off, and he hasn't been able to rebound. So I don't know if he's going to this week, but I took a stab with Jason Day as a short underdog over Morikawa. And then Rory McIlroy at -120 over Victor Hovland. We talked about Rory a little bit earlier. I didn't back him in the outright market, but I think he's ready to have a pretty good week. And Victor Hovland, conversely, I don't know if I want to say this is more of a bet going against Hovland than on McIlroy. It's a combination of both. Victor has been really good the past couple of weeks, but we started to see the wheels come off a little bit on the back 9 at Colonial when he was actually in contention. He started off a little slow, then put a couple of good rounds together and got himself in the mix. And then the wheels came off a little bit again. And, after being in that grind at the PGA Championship, he was a fade for me the following week at Colonial. Well, he proved me wrong, and he hung in there. But then again, it looked like he started to kind of run out of gas on Sunday. And I wonder if he'll be completely out of gas this week. So Hovland was a little bit of a fade for me. He was a fade for me last week. I'm gonna go against him here again this week, and maybe this week I'm right. And I do think Rory will play pretty well. I thought -120 was a fair price for sure. Ricky Fowler at -125 over Cameron Young. We know Cameron Young's just a world-class talent, absolutely. And I think that guy could probably win on any day at any course. But I just don't know if it's going to happen this particular week. I don't think he has all the skill sets in his game that fit perfectly for this golf course. And I think Fowler, as he's proven in the past, does. So I laid the small price there at 125 over Cam Young. And then a big underdog here, Wyndham Clark at +130 over Corey Connors. And I have seen some sharp people out there that like Corey Connors to have a successful week this week. I wouldn't be surprised. Comes off of a tremendous campaign at the PGA Championship. You know, when his irons are firing, he's always in the mix. But I think Wyndham Clark's due for a bounce back as well. You know, he came off of that win at the Wells Fargo, and then understandably so, he kind of faded the following week. But I think he's ready to jump back into the mix here. And I thought the price was in his favor at plus 130. I mean, I think it ought to be maybe closer to plus 110 or something like that, maybe even a pick 'em here. So I think Wyndham Clark will be competitive in that head-to-head.
Going back to Morikawa, Rick Gaiman, I was watching his podcast the other day, and he was following Morikawa for, he said, at least a half a round, if not a full round. And he's obviously seen a lot of Colin up close. And he says the sound and the crispness coming off of his irons isn't the sound that he was accustomed to. I mean, we know Colin and his iron play is the best, if not one of the best in the business. He just seems like, as he was describing, just a tick off, he said.
Yep, I hear you loud and clear. The last time we saw Colin Morikawa be a tick off was the Scottish Open a few years back. And, you know, he even talked about it, how he admitted something's wrong. Well, the next week he went out and won the British Open. So we'll see what he does here this week. The man has shown an affinity to be able to bounce back quickly. I'm hoping not too quickly, or at least that Jason Day finishes higher than my fellow resident Las Vegan here, Colin Morikawa.
Lastly, first round leaders.
Yeah, first round leaders, went with 3, and I landed on Hideki Matsuyama. And when I was putting this together, it's what led me. Hideki was not originally on my outright card, and I started putting this first round leader column together for the PGA Tour, and I talked myself into Matsuyama for an outright as well. I think he makes a lot of sense for the first round leader too. I mentioned, you know, I think on Thursday, we have to look at our macro handicap and what we're trying to isolate for the entire golf tournament as far as players and skill sets and what have you. And then for just a first round leader for Thursday, I think you want to try and pick, okay, what are the 2 areas that if a guy gets really hot for a minute on one round, what's he going to do well on Thursday that'll get him to the lead? And as I mentioned a little earlier, I think it's strokes gained approach, iron play, and work around the greens. And there's not a whole lot better in the field this week, especially when you combine the 2, than Hideki Matsuyama. And I think that can not only carry him to a possible first round lead, but possibly win the whole tournament as well. This is very interesting. Over the last 12 rounds, Matsuyama is 4th in this field for strokes around the green on courses with long rough and firm and fast greens. So we've seen him do it at Augusta. We've seen him win here at the Memorial. He's very well versed on these type of conditions. And I expect him to be good here once again with the way he's been playing as of late. And speaking of the way he's been playing as of late, Benny An has been fantastic at 80-1 by Young-Hoon An. Comes off of a 21st place finish at Colonial. Prior to that, he finished 14th at the Byron Nelson. He hasn't missed a cut since last November. And if you look at some of the things this guy's doing over the last 36 rounds, 26th in this field for strokes gained approach and bogey avoidance. I really like bogey avoidance when you're looking at a first round leader. If you make a bogey during the first round, you may not be the first round leader. Your chances go down drastically if you make a bogey. 37th on tour in birdie average and 21st in first round scoring average. He's opened twice here at the Memorial with a 68. And is, I mentioned the last 12 rounds with courses with long rough and firm and fast greens, and Hideki Matsuyama ranking 4th in this field for strokes gained around the green. And under those conditions, Ben An is 17th in this field under those same conditions. So not too shabby there as well. And then I went with Kevin Streelman at 90-1. And this guy didn't quite fit the model I was using as far as first round leader completely. He doesn't rank that high in strokes gained approach. He's 84th in this field for strokes gained approach over the last 36 rounds, but really good on the short game. 15th in strokes gained around the green and 10th in scrambling, also comes in good form. He was 18th at the Wells Fargo Championship, and he just finished 9th at Colonial last week. He's finished top 10 here at the Memorial 3 times and also finished top 20 an additional 3 times. He's opened with a round here as low as 67. He has twice shot 66 here on the final round in 2011 and 2019. And then in 2015, he shot a Saturday 65. So this guy has shown he can go low on this course. I'm just hoping in 2023 it happens on Thursday.
What was the number you got on Matsuyama?
40. 40 on Matsuyama, 80 on Ben On, and 90 on Streelman.
One of my greatest first-round leaders was Matsuyama. I think he birdied 16, parred miraculously 17, and I was getting ready for the split, the 3 or 4 way tie, and he sunk like a 45-footer on 18.
I thought you were going to mention I had him to win the Players' Championship in 2020. And he came out on Thursday, and I mentioned that TPC Sawgrass is one of my correlated courses. Matsuyama has tremendous finishes there, 3 top 10s in his career. In 2020, he got out to a first-round lead of 63 and tied a course record. And then you recall the golfing world came to a halt. They canceled the tournament because of COVID. And I was so disappointed. I had Matsuyama at around 40-1 or so. He gets out to a lead like that. But I think that's another good indicator with what we're dealing with here. A correlated course, he has that ability to go low in round 1.
Next week, did I hear correct? They go to Canada. Is that correct?
Yeah, the Canadian Open is a tune-up for the U.S. Open. I mean, we've got a real good run of golf tournaments right now. Colonial last week really played, I think, a lot like a U.S. Open test. I mean, 8 under par being your winning score. And then you go to Jack's Place, which is, speaks for itself. And I think the Canadian Open is going to be a nice tune-up. And then we go to the U.S. Open. So a nice little 4-week run here.
The scroller's been going the whole time. Anyone not watching and not following Brady, please, please, please do yourself some justice here. Go over to Twitter at Las Vegas Golfer. You can find his work at golf_com, at GolfBet, obviously on the PGA Tour tonight on the Sports Grid. And please go follow and subscribe to the Heat Strokes podcast. But I will let you tell everyone exactly where to go.
Well, I think you pretty much hit the gamut there. I got to ask you, though, I know you've watched once or twice. Are you enjoying the Heat Strokes podcast? We came up with the theory that, Matt Humans and I, we kind of concocted the idea, and we have a rotating number of hosts that fill in. Matt's supposed to be with us in a couple of weeks for the U.S. Open, but Matt and I play a ton of golf together in the dead heat of summer, and especially did so during the COVID years when, there was nothing else to do but get outside and play golf. So we decided, why don't we, review a bunch of these golf courses that we've played in the dead heat of summer. We'll do that for about 10 or 15 minutes. And then the last 10 or 15 minutes, we'll go over our picks for that week's PGA Tour event. I thought it was a pretty cool concept. Have you enjoyed it? Is it going well for you?
I am a golf junkie, and I'm more jealous of these courses that you guys have played. And and I'm sitting. Listen, we have some nice courses on the Cape, and I've played some real nice courses. I worked at a private course on the Cape, but I have never been able to jump on a plane, go over to Hawaii, and just pull the sticks with me. And the courses that you guys play, immense, immaculate, whatever the word, description, adjective. And then I get to hear your picks. So I mean, it was an amazing idea, and I love it. 1,000 stars, Brady.
All right. Terrific. Well, I'm glad you enjoy it. We enjoy it. It's a lot of fun as well to talk a little golf, and then, of course, talk some golf handicapping. That's at Heat Strokes Podcast on YouTube. You can check that out there. And, really for all the information, whether I'm writing for the PGA Tour or appearing on Sports Grid, whatever it is, it's pretty much all there for you to track at Las Vegas Golfer on Twitter.
And don't forget to catch him tonight with Dubs Anderson on the Sports Grid. Let me see, 9:00 my time. Is that correct?
About 10:15.
10:50. Okay, you're back at 10:15. So last week you were early, right? You were on
I
the first
did.
side.
Yeah.
Okay.
You and I discussed that. I had a commitment last week. No commitment this week. We'll probably do 2 segments with Dubsy. Look forward
Our,
to it.
Back East guys, 10:15 on Sports Grid. Go check them out. So for myself, Jeff Dawson at EC Sports Invest, Brady Kannon at Las Vegas Golfer. Best of luck to everyone. Any questions, comments, concerns, you can go find Brady at Las Vegas Golfer, or you can find me at EC Sports Invest. Otherwise, have a great night and see you soon.